Hello everyone, welcome to another deck profile with me, Chocobilly, and this is, as you can probably tell, my monster deck for Opus 23. I mean, it's in like the first couple of weeks of Opus 23 anyway, so yeah, it's got a lot of random stuff thrown in there just because I wanted to test it all, but actually there is some synergy between things as well. So yeah, it was a lot of fun to build, and it was a lot of fun to run, but as you can imagine, with lots of multi-element, it's going to clunk sometimes. Start with backups, move on to forwards, then monsters and summons. So backups, you've got Sarah, which can go straight into Princess Sarah as well. So the idea behind that is ultimately get yourself some lightning, because there is fire, there is wind, and there is lightning in your monsters, but most of the time the lightning is really what you want to be focusing on, because that's got what I consider the best synergy. You also have the class 10th Moogle to be able to generate you lightning as well, so theoretically you could go Sarah into fire if you wanted to, and then your class 10th for lightning, and then earth for earth, or water for water. But that's a little too volatile in my opinion, so just stick to one. Blue Mage, so when it enters the field, discard a monster. When we do so, draw a card. Lots of monsters, so you should be able to get a card. And obviously, if it's a monster that you can't use, say you've got the Phoenix in your hand or Notsugo and you're not going to be able to play it, then ditch it. Also, getting something in the break zone so you can then use it for Blue Mage's later effect would be useful as well, similar for Animist. And then, yeah, draw your card. Animist, so at damage 3 you get to, on entry, search for a monster of 4 or less and add it to your hand, which is quite nice, but realistically Ahriman's only the best 4 cost. Phoenix, you'd need to be able to play that onto the field, but again Animist can also search for a monster of 2 or less and play that onto the field as well, really nice. But being able to use either Animist or Blue Mage to play things during your opponent's turn, just to get a monster and be like, I don't like what's happening, let's do a thing. So with Blue Mage, it can be a monster of 4 or less again, so you can play the Phoenix or the Ahriman if they're in your break zone to then hopefully kill something if you've got your opponent's got something that they want to attack with, and similarly be able to search something. I mean, I guess I kind of have to go through the monsters now just to show you all the different things that you can do, but actually no, I'll save it. But being able to play any of these during mid-combat at any point, because neither of these have a you can only use these on your turn pretext, it's just do it whenever you want, so really good cards. Kolka, it's a king, so it's searchable off of Sarah. Discard, you've got a few forwards, but chances are you won't be wanting to use that. Ultimately it's just a 2-cost king and earth. Gordon, it's a prince, it's searchable off of Sarah, draws you a card, potentially, draws you 2, depends. That's realistically the only real reason it's in here. And then you've got class 10th Moogle, the lightning, Princess Sarah. Obviously you could make Princess Sarah wind or earth if you wanted, water or earth if you wanted to, because you can dull for a buff as well, but actually 9 times out of 10 buffing the things I wanted to buff were actually the lightning cards, because they were just outside of kill range then. So forwards got Suzahisa. It's a great card that can get you multiple cards to your hand, and it's retrievable through zombie. Similar for Mira, she is realistically what makes the deck tick, because gets you monsters to hand. She's an expert, she can protect your monsters as well if you're just blocking with something. If you just need to if you need to block like 5 attacks in one turn, just use it on your blue worm or whatever and just let him keep on trying to swing through. Beastmaster, if you want to find some additional monsters that way as well, Beastmaster is a nice alternative to Mira. Didn't really ever play it that often though. It's a nice card to have, but realistically, just play more monsters. So, Witch of the Fens for Opus 23 is such a good card. Now, I've only got one in this deck because I only own one, sadly. But yeah, so when Witch of the Fens enters the field, if you control a monster, draw a card, pretty good. But then put a monster into the break zone, choose one forward, it loses 7,000 power till the end of the turn. Wow, what an effect. So obviously that works excellently with something like Moth Slasher, because when Moth Slasher is put from the field into the break zone, you may search for one card, then Moth Slasher of 2 or less, and play it onto the field. So you could do that twice with Witch of the Fens, and -7, 2 different things, and still have a Moth Slasher. Again, works nicely if you want to put, say, Ahriman into the break zone, -7k something, then you Blue Mage to play Ahriman back onto the field to get his entry effect to kill something else. You know, there's always really good combos that you can do with Witch of the Fens by putting something into the break zone and then replaying it through Animist or just through Blue Mage, sorry. And similarly with something like Moth Slasher, just being able to replay things as well. It's so good. And -7k is a pretty decent amount as well, considering all you're doing is putting a monster into the break zone. Out of all the cards or the monsters I have, not many of them really have that from the field into the break zone effects. You could run something like the Piranha as well, which when it's put from the field into the break zone, you draw a card or something, get damage 3, so that would work quite nicely. But ultimately, I wanted to focus on using stuff like Moth Slasher, Gog Magog, and stuff like that. But yeah, Witch of the Fens, take out a Beastmaster, put in a Witch of the Fens. Quina, actually, really good card. For the reason I just kind of said, being able to play monsters whenever you want, and drawing a card off of it as well, is so good. Say you've got Quina already on the field, and you play Realm, and you search yourself an Apkalu, a Blue Worm, and you've got Quina, you draw 3 cards. That's really not that bad. And being able to Blue Mage or Animist during your opponent's turn, play something onto the field. Oh look, I draw another card as well. So good. Frog Drop, S1 Water, choose one monster until the end of the turn, choose one forward until the end of the turn and lose 3,000 power for each monster either player controls. Either player, so that's actually pretty decent as well. So if you control only 2 but your opponent controls 1 as well, that's -9, so it's not too bad. I actually genuinely quite like this Quina, and the games that I won or went well were because of Quina. Having that consistent draw addition with Quina on the field, it was really, really strong, so I recommend running Quina. It's Frog Drop S, probably is never going to happen, but you don't need to worry about that because it's the card you're getting through, and it's an 8k. It's nice just to have a Quina that's actually kind of a decent power for once. It could probably stand to be a bit cheaper, be a 3 CP, something like that, but either way, getting the draws when you're playing something like an Apkalu or a Fencer, hardcasting them, for 1 CP if something isn't doing something immediately, Quina immediately gets you some form of value, so I really, really like Quina. Realm. Obviously, you can play a multitude of different things, but one of the best cards it can play is Silver Dragon. Now, you don't really have a means of playing Silver Dragon out of cheating onto the field through something like Animist or Blue Mage or Quina, but Silver Dragon making it so that, oh, your monsters can't be targeted anymore. If your opponent's trying to kill a forward, or a monster you've made into a forward and they're trying to kill it, cheating out Silver Dragon through something like Animist. I'm getting off the topic of Realm now. It's quite nice, but yeah, Silver Dragon's a fantastic target. Gizmaluke as well, so Apkalu and Gizmaluke, you draw a card, you get to look at the top 3, add a monster to your hand as well, after playing 2 monsters onto the field. Yeah, really, really good. You know, you could play something like the Soul Cage as well, which would work out nicely when it obviously dies. You can put from field into breakdown. There's loads and loads and loads of different builds of this sort of deck, and you can do so much with it. You can definitely go more fire if you really wanted to and have something like Soul Cage in there, but I quite like the way this went. Zombie and Apkalu, Fencer and or Notsugu and something else is really nice because you get that immediate kill. Notsugu does 9k to something, Fencer chooses a 4/4 less and break it, and obviously they have to put another monster into the break zone as well as themselves, so Notsugu and Fencer, or Fencer and Moth Slasher, you immediately get that I'm going to break, but actually you get another monster back onto the field as well. If there ever becomes another Moth Slasher that this Moth Slasher can play, this is actually really, really good. And then we'll just quickly go over Gao. Obviously he can put things on top of the deck, or bottom of the deck, can't remember. Making monsters otherwise couldn't become monsters, and potentially being free as well. But I never really played him. Honestly, he's a decent card, but I think I'd rather have another Witch of the Fens. Maybe. I'm not sure. Maybe I just should have had more of him in the deck, potentially. Like take out a Beastmaster and put in another Gao. I don't know. I mean, a free card that gets rid of a forward is not bad at all. But what you find with this deck is actually you're rinsing through your monsters pretty quickly. So you want to keep on replenishing them through things like Animist Blue Mage and whatnot, and having Quina draw you more monsters. So actually, unless you're already in a pretty safe winning position, you probably won't have more than 5 monsters on the field. At which point, you know, if you're using Notsugu and something else, kill something, and then Gao's in 3 or whatever, obviously you play him first, but you see where I'm going with this, is that ultimately you're going to be probably never actually having that many Gao on the field. You can amass things and then go for game if you want, and Gao is a great way of doing that, but against a lot of the cards or decks that I was playing up against were quite aggressive, so even though I was building this really wide board, I had to deal with the opponent's forwards, and I don't obviously have many summons in here. A lot of my removal is the monsters themselves, so yeah. Anyway, Quickly summons Anima because it removes things and that's just very potent, and Fenrir because it's a free cast on your Silver Dragon to make it so it can't be targeted by summons. So you obviously got Silver Dragon protecting everything else, you want to be able to protect your Silver Dragon. Fenrir free cast, make it can't be targeted by summons, obviously still can through abilities as well, so maybe there's something there about running a Tyson or something like that to make so it can't be broken, whatever, but regardless, being able to protect your Silver Dragon is pretty important in my books. So, Notsko and Fencer, both decent cards at removing things and be able to search off of Realm or searching off of Animist and play it onto the field and then immediately using the effect. Even if you are getting rid of one of your other monsters, it's not that bad. Apkalu is probably one of the monsters to get rid of. I changed this for 2 though actually, because there were a few times where I was like, actually I want this additional draw, so I would say maybe get rid of a Fencer and up Apkalu to 2. Zombie, I used it a couple of times, but it was actually quite rare that I had a Suzuhisa or Mira in my break zone, which is quite strange. I think the problem is that Mira obviously comes onto the field, the opponent doesn't want to replay her. You can obviously break her to do something, but you're only going to do that when it benefits you. So 9 times out of 10, Zombie never felt like a good card to play. So even though it's really good for stuff like Suzuhisa and Mira, either put more 1 costs in, or maybe take Zombie out. I don't know. Blue Worm draws your card on entry. I prefer Blue Worm over the Tomberry because I never really felt like I had too many cards in hand. Obviously, again, this is a massive, or a mishmash of different elements. If this were just Earth, pure Earth, Water, then maybe you'd be in a better situation because you'd have more cards drawing your cards, like Tomberry. But Blue Worm felt better for me. Moth Slasher, already gone over this. Put in the field by Witch of the Fens, Notsugo, Fencer, Black Widow as well, obviously, is one of the good ones. But it really, really is strong. I really like this card, and just even if you are pure water, earth, water, whatever, Witch of the Fens and Moth Slasher together are so good. I cannot stress that enough. So I just, recommend putting them in there, 100% put them in there together. Silver Dragon, gone over this before, but you know, even if it isn't a forward, the monsters other than Silver Dragon you control are going to be chosen by your opponent's summons or abilities. So making it just so everything else can't be chosen, although that would be one other forward, so one other monster, so it would be a forward. But yeah, okay, fair enough. But interesting that it isn't tied necessarily to it being a forward. But yeah, one other monster on the field that becomes a 9k for 2 CP is just incredibly strong, and then protecting things as well. Wow, and then it's a Silver Dragon 599, which is also pretty cool, so, you know, that's not bad. Gogmagog, really good card. Again, another 2CP 9k if you control 2 monsters, and then when Gogmagog is put from the field to the break zone, you may remove 1 monster you control from the game. When you do so, play Gogmagog from the break zone onto the field. Doesn't work obviously with Moth Slasher because you're removing that monster from the game, so you want it to be something that has paid its value already coming in, so something like Apkalu, really. That's another reason for running more Apkalu, just having monsters that came onto the field and did their thing and then just sit there, don't do much else. They are really what Gogmagog is looking for. So I actually had too many monsters in this which didn't want to be removed, unless of course you're removing them so you can replay them. So maybe removing your Gizmalook to then play another Gizmalook ain't so bad. But yeah, having Gogmagog just there as a constant blocker as well is really, really strong. So I can't recommend that enough. But it needs to be removing the right things. If you're just removing other blockers, then you might as well be blocking with those. Obviously, Gogmagog can potentially be killing something, but yeah, just be mindful of the monsters you put in the deck with it, because Gogmagog wants to get rid of things that aren't useful. Black Widow, when it attacks, put a monster into the break zone. We do so, choose a full deal 9k. 9k! That is not a small amount. Yes, you're sacking off a monster, but again, if you're in water, you're getting rid of things like Apkalu or Moth Slasher, you are just absolutely nuking stuff, and it's still an 8k as well for 2 CP, which isn't bad at all. Obviously, just be mindful of the fact that if you attack with it, and you've got Black Widow, and say your last Moth Slasher, if Moth Slasher dies, it doesn't replay something back onto the field. Black Widow is no longer a forward, so that attack that just happened is no longer happening, because it's not a forward anymore, so it can't attack. Gizmalook, really, really good monster card. Top 3, add a monster to your hand, not much more to say than that, and it's an 8k as well, so pretty cool. Araman, it breaks something as long as it's not multicolor, and Phoenix, it gets to deal 9k something. So the reason for having Araman and Phoenix is similar for having Notsko and Fencer, is that I want to have just break the forward, but I also want to have deal the forward X amount of damage, because more often than not, a forward will have some form of protection, which means it can't be dealt damage or it can't be broken. Very rarely is it both. So having, you know, both of those kind of set aside is quite nice. If you are up against a deck which is, you know, kind of ability proof, like Dancers for example, that's going to suck. No other way of putting it, that's going to suck. At which point you might want to start putting in cards like Kuchulain, so that you can Kuchulain the Mayakov and then Ironman him to kill him. You know, there's lots of different things out there, means of getting around them, but be very wary of decks that are ability proof. But again, this deck was a lot of fun to run, but it's a very mishmashy. Silver Dragon, I don't think you really needed it, if I'm honest. It's rare, I found, that my opponent would be targeting many of my monsters until I made them forwards. Now obviously Silver Dragon still protects them because they're still under monster, but the problem is that he would never really be there to protect them, and you don't really want to attack with him because your opponent might have something up their sleeve. And I really liked Silver Dragon as a concept, but I just never found him actually that useful. That being said, I could have just been what I was playing up against. Realistically, he's actually quite strong because it's summons and abilities, but I think maybe he's not sat in the right deck. I wasn't playing the deck where I kept my monsters on the field for ages. I actually kept on killing most of my monsters through things like Witch of the Fens and Black Widow, so maybe because of that, Silver Dragon isn't a good inclusion. So if you're using your monsters as ammunition to get rid of your opponent's forwards, maybe don't include Silver Dragon. However, if you just want to amass things onto the field, it's still a really good target for something like Realm. So if you're just playing lots of Tonberries and Abkalus and whatever else, just to get all these forwards onto the field, and then board wipe, go for game. Not too bad if you ask me. And while I'm thinking of it, something that works quite nicely, a lot of these different monsters, the way they become forwards varies depending on them. So you've got Zombie. Well, Abkalu doesn't even become a forward, but Zombie, you pay an action ability to make it become a monster. Forward, sorry. Same with Blue Worm, but then you've got Moth Slasher, just on your turn it becomes a forward. Then you've got Silver Dragon, if you've got enough monsters it becomes a forward. So you have to be very mindful of any effects that you're running, because of the fact that you've got so many different means of making your forwards monsters. When you're attacking or blocking or getting rid of your monsters because of certain effects, just remind yourself of what is and what isn't a monster and what their prerequisites are, because you might forget, you know, you're going to block with Gogmagog, but before you do so you want to kill something with your Witch of the Fens, and then all of a sudden Gogmagog isn't a forward anymore because you got rid of the wrong monster, and we got rid of the second monster. So there are all these little things that you have to bear in mind. Moth Slasher not being a forward in your opponent's turn, things like that. So you can't block it, so it's never going to keep on going away. So if you're using Witch of the Fence mate on your opponent's turn, maybe Moth Slasher is better for that option. And even though Moth Slasher plays the forward onto the field active, you're not going to be able to block with them. So yeah, all these little things to consider. But ultimately, really, really fun. Being able to use Blue Mage and Animus to cheat things onto the field during your opponent's turn, fantastic. And playing things like Ahriman and Phoenix are a lot of fun. And you can play any of the monsters, right? You can just play so much onto the field. Maybe you might want to run a Tyro in the deck to be able to search out your Realm or your Quinnet or your Witch of the Fens, and then having that multi-element there as well. It would be quite nice. But realistically, I just wanted to go for that little type package that I got, and it worked really well. But yeah, a lot of fun. Monsters are a lot of fun. Quinnet was so good. I actually think I prefer Quinnet over the Witch of the Fens. Witch of the Fens is a really nice to have card, but I feel like it fits in a deck that has lots of monsters but isn't necessarily a monster deck. So Mono Water just generally would have lots of monsters. You'll have your Tonberries and your Blue Worms and things like that. So being able to just be like, take a few things out and then go for game with Witch of the Fence is quite nice. Quinnet, on the other hand, wants to be in a deck that's a monster deck. Getting a draw off of every single time a monster enters the field. I think it's your opponent's monsters as well. So when a monster enters either player's turn, draw a card. I like that a lot. So yeah, definitely use that. And like I said, using Blue Mage and Animus on your opponent's turn, play something onto the field. Maybe play Ahriman onto the field. I'm going to kill your forward. Oh, and I'm going to draw a card because Quinnet. And then I'm going to put Ahriman into the break zone for Witch of the Fens. Whatever, I don't know. It's stupid things like that. Anyway, I really like this deck. I think it's a lot of fun, but let me know what monster decks you guys have built, because there are so many different ways you can go with this. You can go Flans with a new Flan. You can go goblins, you can go bombs, you can go Black Widow and Moth Slasher stuff. There's just so many different routes, and I love that. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, guys. Stay safe, be lucky, and I'll see you in the next video.